Basically, what we're going to be working on is a creative exercise that's going to mimic like a real life scenario where you may have a logo from an existing established client who already has an established brand. And it's our job to take this static logo that they feel very passionately about, it represents their business, and to turn it into something fun and dynamic and exciting. I own a video production company. I should introduce myself in case you don't know. My name is Jenn Jager. I own a video production company over in Boca in Palm Beach County, and I do a lot of corporate videos. And so this is the kind of thing that I do day in and day out as a video production professional. So I'm a longtime Final Cut user, a longtime Apple Motion lover. And you may also know me from YouTube. I have a YouTube channel where I have plenty of Final Cut and Apple Motion tutorials if you guys are curious about that. All right, so the first thing we're going to do when we think about this client, I messed things up here, so let me get this all on one page, is this is going to be our project brief. So this is going to be the information we have from the client that's going to kind of help us sort of shape the type of animation that we do. So our assignment is to create an end animation for a 30-second commercial for a company called Cybersecurity Insurance. The client profile is that they offer standalone cyber liability insurance policies to businesses. We help businesses understand their vulnerabilities, reduce their risks, and restore online assets in the event of a ransomware attack to mitigate disruption. Cybersecurity isn't the name of a real company, but this is based on a real business that I've worked with. The brand identity, they identified themselves with the following terms: trust, security, technical, forward-thinking, proactive, and responsive. And here's the fonts and colors that they use. And up top is that logo. So I'm going to minimize out of this, and let's fire up Apple Motion. And here, you probably are familiar with this. This is what the project browser looks like in motion. I'm going to be going really step by step with you guys, so those of you who are following along can recreate the type of animation I'm going to create today using the thought process that I would normally use in a real client situation based on the parameters of the project and that project brief that we got. So you can, I'm sure you guys know that you can choose your presets here. Freaking 1080 today. Normally I would do 4K. Our frame rate, I'm going to set to 24 frames per second. And our project duration, we could put any duration in here. But what do we know about the assignment that we're going to be doing today? It's an end animation for a 30-second commercial. So what do we think needs to happen with this animation? Go ahead. Yeah, it's got to be fast. And so I actually would say that the end screen is probably 5 seconds, but you want the logo to have landed for at least 3.5 of those seconds. So the animation we're going to build is literally less than 2 seconds. I see a lot of really creative people when they're having fun with logo animation and they want to make this 10-second long logo animation. But in real life, that's actually not that practical. As someone who makes commercials all day, every day, animations have to happen quickly. And that means multiple things need to happen all at once. So now that I've got those settings, I'm going to leave the duration at 10 seconds. I do like as an editor to have pad, especially if it's a client I work with frequently. Maybe today we're doing a 30-second commercial, but tomorrow we're doing, you know, a 5-minute corporate video. Maybe I do want a 10-second pad on my animation, even though the actual animation happens quickly. So let's select Motion Project. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is save my project and give it a name. Let's just have good habits here. So I'm going to call this Cybersecurity Animation. I'm just going to save it to my desktop for convenience. Okay, so we are going to be bringing in a PSD file, a Photoshop file that was created in either Photoshop. You may have gotten it from a program called Pixelmator Pro, which I have a session about after lunch that I hope you guys join. Did you have a question, Jacob? Okay. If anyone has any questions, you guys were a small group. You can just call it out. Go ahead. I'm at 24. Yeah. Yeah, I did 1080 just because I'm on this usually I work on a more powerful computer and I just don't want to get hung up with all the plugins and stuff where, things I've plugged in. Okay, so I'm going to bring in this PSD file, and I want to show you the proper way to bring in a PSD file into Motion. So I'm going to demonstrate it. I would encourage you not to do it until you see me do it, unless you already know how to do this. So I'm going to open up my Finder window. Let me go back to Motion. Hold on. Why did that disappear? I'm sorry, guys. This is not my computer, and it's set up to do something different than I would expect it to do. Okay. There we go. Okay, let's try that again. So I'm going to navigate to my file, my PSD file. Here it is. And I'm going to drag it from my Finder. I'm going to hover in my project pane until I get this menu here. Do you all see that? And I'm going to select Import All Layers. And now I've got all of my layers, my elements of my logo as individual components. So I would encourage all of you guys to try that. So you're going to click and drag, hover until you get that menu, and the option is Import All Layers. That's what you're looking for. Yes. Oh, that's right. Let me pull it up real quick. You're very welcome. Okay, you're fine. I left a lot, like this presentation's a little bit loose. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I pull it down too quick? Okay, sorry. This presentation's like, I left a lot of time so we can have questions because I want everyone to actually be able to execute. Okay. So the PSD file is what you're looking for. All right, so now let's take a look at this logo. When I look at this, I see like 3 different things. As an animator, I see like the text as one piece. I see these lines behind the shield as a second piece, and I see the shield as its own piece. For me, that's what I see. And again, I'm going to go through this step by step in the way I would animate it. If you guys see something different, feel free. And I know a lot of you guys use Motion. What we're going to do is focus on these individual pieces. To me, I'm going to start with that group of lines. So what I'm going to do is head on over to my project pane here, and I'm just going to uncheck to mute the other elements. So we're really just focused on the lines. Now I'm thinking, okay, what can I do that's going to be quick with these lines? For me, I think of the brand, trustworthiness, responsiveness, security. So what I would personally like to see is like somehow these lines to like lock together. Like that's what I see in my head. You might see something different. And I always say when I do this presentation, we might do something we think is awesome and the client might hate it, but we're going to do our best today. I always put my best foot forward with the client. But this is what I see with their logo. So what I would like to do is have the first, third, and fifth lines as one unit, and the second and fourth lines as a separate unit. So what we need to do is group these lines together so we can treat them as actual units, even though right now they're 5 separate components. So I'm going to go through my project pane and try to identify which lines they are, because I do see they're a little out of order. And I'm going to highlight the ones 1, 3, and 5 to make them a group. So to highlight multiple layers, you just hold down the Command key and click on them. And then what I'm going to do, bless you, is right click and group these guys together. And now you can see in my project pane, I have a group, and I'm going to rename this group. I'm going to call this thing 3 lines so we don't get confused. And I like all caps with my projects. And I'm going to clap set up. Now I'm going to select the other 2 lines by clicking on each one, holding down my Command key, right clicking and grouping those. And let's call this 2 lines. Okay, and I'm going to collapse that one up because I don't need to look at all those separate pieces. So now what I'm going to do is disable or mute those 2 lines by unchecking them. So I can just focus on this 3 lines group. And I want to think about, we talked about like having these lines locked together. How do I want them to lock together? I think what I want them to do, these 3 lines, is start sideways and spin on the Z-axis into place. So in order to make animations in motion, there's a couple different ways you could do it. You can use, of course, keyframes. Is everyone familiar with keyframing? You guys seem like you a little more advanced, right? Or you can use, if you know motion, you know what they are. Behaviors, thank you. You can use behaviors. So today we're going to be really focusing on behaviors. I don't know if you guys have ever seen my YouTube channel, but my favorite behavior is the overshoot behavior. Does anyone know what the overshoot behavior does? Could anyone describe it? Let's go look in the library and it'll tell us what it does. It's under parameter and overshoot. Where are you? It's like a bounce. They like describe it in the most non-conversational way. Changes a parameter from one specific value to another over time, overshooting past the end value before springing back like a robot. It's a bounce. But for this client, even though I love the overshoot, I'm not going to use the overshoot. To me, the overshoot is what? It's like happy, it's exuberant, you know, all these behaviors, they have personalities. And the overshoot is the best personality of the behaviors, in my opinion. But I don't think it fits with this particular very serious, responsive, secure, trustworthy client. So for me, the behavior that I think is going to work is this one here. Exponential. Changes a parameter from one specific value to another over time using an exponential equation. So watch this line here. See that curves way up on a steep incline? Not that line, this one here. So it's going to start rotating kind of slow, and then it's going to snap into position, and that's kind of what we want. So let's apply the overshoot, the exponential behavior to our 3 lines. And I know that if you were in the tips and tricks session with Abba and Jeff, they talked about how there's 4 or 5 ways to do anything in Final Cut. It's kind of the same thing here in Apple Motion. My habit is to go up to behaviors, this button here, go down to parameter and select exponential. You could also just drag exponential onto the 3 lines group if you so chose. Or you could, I mean, there's a million ways. You could go over to the 3 lines, go over to the inspector and know which property you want it to transform, and then use this drop down and access over here. So now I've got the exponential behavior applied, and let's play with some of these values. First of all, let me just run down my timeline. There ain't nothing to see because we have not applied this behavior to any of the properties of these lines. So in this case, I want to hit the apply to line on the inspector window. We're going to go to 2. Remember, I said I want to rotate on the Z. 2, properties, transform, rotation, and Z. I'm going to leave it up here for a sec. Okay. Let's zoom back out. So now, still nothing's happening here at all in my timeline because we haven't changed any of the start or end values, the offsets, or anything else we can access here in the inspector. So what I want to do is have these go from a 90-degree angle and then land at 0. So I'm going to cue my playhead to the very beginning of my timeline, and I'm going to start the value at 90. So now my lines are sideways. And I'm going to reveal my behaviors in my timeline. If you're not seeing the purple bar here in your timeline, make sure you click this gear at the top of your timeline index to turn on and off your behaviors in your timeline. So now I'm going to run my playhead, and we can see that really nothing happens until way down here. Let me get rid of this little zoom window. We're doing a recording of this, and I don't know where a good spot to hide this little guy is. Okay, we'll leave it up there. So nothing really happens toward the end of my timeline. And what did we say? This animation needs to happen in less than 2 seconds, right? So this is not exactly what we want. And it's also happening very slowly. So what I'm going to do is queue up my playhead to about, let's say, the 13 frame mark. I'm going to make sure I'm selected on the exponential behavior, either in my project pane or in my timeline. And I'm going to hit the O key to mark it out. So now this animation is going to happen much faster. There we go, locking into place. All right, I'm going to leave the 3 lines at the start of my timeline here. I want this to be the first thing I see in my logo animation. I'm going to leave it there, but I don't want it to just already be on the screen. I want it to fade in. So let's add on a fade on behavior to this guy. So again, select it on the 3 lines group, make sure we're working on the right element, head up to behaviors, basic motion, fade in and fade out. And now we see our fade in and fade out behavior applied there. Let's head over to the inspector window under the behaviors tab. And I'm going to make the fade in time just 4 frames. And I'm going to make the fade out time 0. So now look at what we've got. Now when I have my playhead queued up to the very beginning of the timeline, there's like nothing to see. Hit the space bar and it fades in real quick and snaps into place. All right, let's move on to our 2 lines. How are these 2 lines going to interact? I think what I want to have happen, because I want that locking motion, right? I think I want my 3 lines to flip into place, and I want the 2 lines to fade in and snap and like intertwine as they should with the other 3 lines, if that makes sense. So we're going to be using the exponential behavior again, but this time we're going to be applying it to the Y position. So what I'm going to do is copy the behaviors from my 3 lines, and I can do that here in the project pane by selecting the behaviors, fade in and fade out, holding down the command key, selecting the exponential behavior, right click, copy, and then head down to my 2 lines and paste. And now I'm going to turn on my 2 lines so we can see them. And of course, now we've got the exact same motion on both, which is not what we want. What we want to do is head over to the behaviors tab, select it on the 2 lines group, and under the exponential copy here, instead of being on the rotation Z apply to line, we're on the apply to line here, we're going to go to 2, properties, transform, position, and Y. And we haven't really changed the start value, so there's not much to see. Let's change the start value to like, let me zoom out a little bit, to, I don't know, like almost to the top. Let me cue up my playhead to the beginning of the timeline so you can see what we're doing. Almost to the top of the frame almost. So I'm at a value of 242.6. I mean, just eyeball it. Whatever you guys think that you like. All of this is subjective. We're all creative thinkers. We're all artists in our own way. So you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. And I think I actually want, well, let me play this back to show you what we have, because this is still not quite right. Let's play it back. Now you can see that those lines are like, let me go frame by frame. See how they're like intersecting? It looks really sloppy. I don't like that. What I want is for these 2 lines to fade in and come in a little after the 3 lines, so it really feels more synchronized. So I'm going to move this 2 lines group a little bit down in my timeline. I'm going to go, that looks about right. I'm going to go 12 frames in, and I'm just going to drag my 2 lines up until that mark there. Oops. And now that feels more like, yeah, we're locking it in. But I actually think the exponential movement on the position Y, for my taste, is happening a little bit slow. So I'm going to grab this exponential behavior. Now look, I'm on the 2 lines here. Here's my exponential behavior. And I'm going to click and drag, and you can see the duration is changing frame by frame, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Let's try 6. Let's see how we like it. There we go. To me, that looks good. We've got animation going. Let's see here. We're 18 frames in. So in 18 frames, we've already got like part of our animation happening. Now what I think is we should work on the shield. So for me, and again, it might be different from you, I see like these lines to me look like people, like a squad, right? So I see the squad getting locked, and then I picture someone with the police shield bringing it over from their right side, right? They're right-handed. So I'm picturing this shield coming in exponentially from the X position and landing in front of these lines. That's what I see. So let's do this again. Let's grab the shield and let's add the exponential behavior again. I'm going to go to behaviors, parameter, exponential. Now the exponential is the whole duration of my timeline, and nothing's happening because we haven't told it what we want to apply this to. We haven't changed any start or end values or anything like that. So I think first I want to make sure I move my shield to the point in the project after these other lines have come down on the Y position. So let's go, I don't know, 17 frames in, and I'm going to drag, let me zoom. I'm going to drag the shield to start at this point. All right, let me zoom out. Let's grab that exponential behavior on the shield. Let's head over to the behaviors tab in the inspector window, and let's apply this to the X position. Remember we said X position, so 2, properties, transform, position, X. And again, nothing's happening because we haven't changed those start values. Let's head up to the start value, and I'm going to zoom out a little. I want it to come from screen left, I guess that is, right? Screen left. So let's change the start value, and I'm going to bring it to a negative number. So if you don't know this, you know, the slider here brings you up. If my computer wasn't freezing, what's happening? There we go. The slider brings you up from 0 to 100, but you can actually grab this digit, click down your mouse key, hold it down, and drag to a negative value. And again, nothing's happening toward the very end of my project because I haven't changed the duration of my exponential behavior. So let's make this exponential behavior about, I don't know, 13 frames. So I'm going to queue up my playhead to the 1 second mark, click on the exponential behavior, and hit the O key to mark an out. Not sure if I did my math right now. Let me zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to drag it to the 13 frame duration. Let me zoom out so I can show you what I got. So now we've got the locking and the shield comes over. I don't like the way the shield just pops in. So we could add a fade in, fade out behavior onto this shield, but I think I want to do something a little bit different. What if we went to the exponential shield, the exponential behavior on the shield in our project plane, right-clicked and duplicated it. So now we have, we have 2 exponential behaviors. And on this new version, the exponential copy, what if we change this from 2, properties, blending, and opacity? Now it's going to fade in not at a continuous rate over a certain number of frames. It's going to fade in exponentially with the movement. Does anyone have any questions so far? You guys are so quiet. Anyone lost? Anyone have another idea for this logo that you want to talk about? Like it should have a little shake on the end. Yeah, okay. I like that a little bit. I do like that. How would you achieve that? A little bit of a wiggle. Let's go through the rest, and I think we're going to have time if we want to play with it. I'd be interested to know what behavior you guys think would be good for that, and we'll try it. I like this idea. All right. We've got another half hour, so we have plenty of time. All right, let's draw our attention to the words cyber and squad. I'm going to turn on cyber. And I think what I want to have happen is for the cyber to come down at the same time that the shield locks in. So the shield's going to come this way and the word cyber is going to come down. So again, let's apply that exponential behavior. I'm going to head down to my timeline here and queue up the word cyber to be in line with shield. And I'm going to make the exponential behaviors the same length. So I'm selected on that exponential behavior and I'm hitting the O key to make them, they're actually, I was off 1 frame, sorry. Let's go back over to the behaviors tab and apply this to the Y position. And let's start it, maybe not so high toward the top of the screen, maybe about here. And on this one, I don't think I'm going to fade it in. I actually kind of like that this one pops in, especially because it's a word and you have to read it. I always say in editing or motion graphic design or anything, you should leave text on the screen longer than you think you have to, because while you've read it a million times, a viewer might be seeing it for the first time. They don't know what it says. And then lastly, let's turn on the squad. This one's going to be a little bit more of a feeling how we move this one. I'm going to move the squad to about maybe halfway through the word cyber, and I might change my mind about this later. And instead of, excuse me, instead of using the exponential, sometimes I just like to throw in something a little different, just to give your eye like a very subtle excuse me, like subliminal interest. So on this one, I'm going to apply the ramp behavior, which is also under parameters. And let's apply this to the X position, but this time it's going to come in from the right side. So I'm on 2 properties, transform, position, and X. And on the start value, let's just have it come from the right side of the screen. And let's have this happen real quick. I want it to end maybe just after the word cyber lands. And I think I might even want to move this down just a hair and maybe have it happen a little faster. So there's our pretty basic animation that did not take us long to build and take something that a client saw in a really like static way and brought it to life a little bit, keeping their brand, their business, their mission in mind. Now, if you know motion, you see me sliding my elements down the timeline here. You see I get a lot of like leftover stuff here on the end. We're going to clean that up. The key to doing what I'm about to do is that you want to hide your behaviors. What I'm going to do before I do it, I'll tell you, I'm going to cue up my playhead to, I don't know, the 8-second mark. I'm going to select all my elements and I'm going to hit the O key to slide everything to be out here. If I don't hide my behaviors, all of these behaviors are going to extend all the way to that like 8-second point. So, and you're going to be very unhappy because everything you just did is going to get undone. So what we're going to do is hide our behaviors at the top of the timeline here by just closing up that gear, queuing up my playhead to, what did I say, the 8-second mark, more or less. I'm going to select all my elements, and I could do that in the project pane. I could do that anywhere. And I'm going to hit O as an out. And you notice I still have some left over. You actually, for reasons I don't understand, maybe someone here is smarter than I am and can explain it, grab the group on its own. That is the group, the whole project group when we brought in all of the elements from our logo. And you have to do that one more time for the group. And then we're going to go onto that group. So right under our project, go to group, and let's add on a fade in, fade out to that. And under the parameters, the fade in time, I'm going to make 0 because I don't want everything to fade in. I already set those settings for my individual elements. And the fade out, I would just make 10. 20 for me is long. So here is our animation, and it fades out. So that is typically my process for working with the client logo. So I know you guys had some other ideas. Does anyone, let's just like try it. Does anyone have a suggestion of what behavior they would want to see applied and to what element you would like to see it applied? You think the overshoot? Let's try it. Well, you can, so the thing about behaviors is you can really fine tune them. So you can make it not so cartoony bouncy. If you want to give it a little shake, let's give it a whirl. So I'm going to disable the original exponential behavior, and I'm going to add a behavior parameter. Where am I? Overshoot. I'm going to make this overshoot behavior the same length as my original exponential behavior. I believe it's 13 frames. And on this, let's go to properties, transform, position X, just like we did before. And then let's make the start value would be the same, I guess, as this exponential we originally have. So let's make it negative 296. I meant to make it a negative 296. Let's try that again. And I think actually I'm going to disable the exponential copy opacity. I think it's tricking our eye a little bit. So that is a little bit of a shake. If you wanted to make it less bouncy, I believe we would crank up the ramp duration, maybe a little too much. There you go. So you do get a little shake there if you like that look. In my opinion, I feel like it's not as strong as the exponential. It does feel a little bit non-committal, I guess, or like not as like secure, that shakiness, but there is no right or wrong. Everything is subjective in this stuff. Does anyone else have any questions about motion? Anything they want to say? Yes, go right ahead. Yeah, in the back, yep. Yeah. Yeah. So it is hard when you get like a PNG file or something really static from a client. Sometimes you may want to bring it into an image editing platform and a little bit reconstruct. There are tools like quick selection tools. These image editing platforms, Photoshop or Pixelmator Pro, which you guys are going to get a look at later today, they have like smart selection. So you'll see a demo of this where they can just identify what you're trying to get out of an element. If you got this as a PNG file, the challenge you're going to have is this transparent gradient of the shield. That's going to be tricky. Everything else, I feel like you could easily recreate by just like cloning, let's say, the lines behind the shield, breaking those up into individual elements. Obviously, the text would be a breeze. Sometimes it's challenging depending on the logo. When you work, with the designer, like ask them for multiple file formats. You would want like a definitely want something super like vector based for if you were doing something for print. You'd want a PNG for your web designer, and then you would want a PSD file for your video editing animator. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge, and it's not uncommon that I have to take a logo into Pixelmator, Photoshop, whatever, and try to piece it together in order to be able to achieve these types of animations. So, it's not going to work in every circumstance. That's just the truth. You had a question, yes? Yeah, okay. So in motion, you can see here this little speaker icon. This is where you can actually enable, let me open this up. And I really wish that I had a music file to drop in here. You could have music in here, and then you would just listen to the beat and drag these elements to where the music makes sense. And actually, I love adding sound effects to a logo like this. Like think about like a heavy door closing, or you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So Motion does have that capability. You can bring video and audio into Apple Motion. Yeah. Yes, it does. It does. It looks just like Final Cut. It's green. It's got waveforms. It looks just like that. Anyone else? Yes. Yes. So there's a thing called the keyframe editor, which I am going to reveal here. I'm going to close up that speaker because it's just tight on the screen. Here are your keyframe editor. The keyframing in Motion is totally superior. I just closed it. Totally superior to Final Cut. So when you're working with the behavior, you'll see this is the exponential behavior. This is the curve that we expect to see, right? You can't, with the behavior, like add keyframes. This just shows you a visual representation of what this is. But if you were actually to create keyframes, and why don't we do that? So I'm going to grab this cyber word. I'm going to disable the behavior, and let's keyframe instead. I'm going to select the cyber word here in my project pane. I'm going to, in this circumstance, because I know where it wants to live, I would make my second keyframe first so I don't lose that place. So to make a keyframe, cue up your playhead to wherever you want the animation to end in this case. Go to your inspector. This is how we make a keyframe. And we know I've made a keyframe because it turns yellow. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning of that element in my timeline. And then I'm going to change the Y value, thereby creating another keyframe. And then down here in my keyframe editor, you can see how different this looks. I'm gonna change this value so that these elements are closer together so you guys can see. So here is the keyframe editor. I can move these keyframes and change the values down here in the keyframe editor. I can right click and change like the motion, the ease in, ease out, or ease both. I can change the interpolation to be, let's say, linear. So now it's a straight line. It was on Bezier before. I could make it exponential again. That's one of the choices. And so this is where you can really fine tune your keyframes. Another thing to know about keyframes is that when I'm playing down here in the keyframe editor, I am messing with the keyframe values or the position of the keyframe, the timing between the keyframes. But if I just want to play with the timing without messing up my values, what you would want to do is head over to the top of your timeline on the right, and you would want to turn on this guy here. And now I'm going to hide my keyframe editor, and now I have these red keyframes in my regular video timeline that I can play with the distance between them. So how long the animation takes to happen, the motion takes to happen, but I'm not messing up with the values. So I recommend once you get your values, but you want to retime things, don't play with the keyframe editor. It's really easy to mess things up. Play with the keyframe viewer in the regular timeline. That would be my recommendation. Does that answer your question? The keyframe, so the big keyframe editor down here where we saw like the exponential, that's these 3 diamonds. But if you want to just do the one in the timeline, it's this guy down here. This one here is snapping, which is just like in Final Cut to make it easier for you to align things. And this guy obviously is a zoom. The keyframing in motion, like I said, is above and beyond what you can do in Final Cut. I did see an online poll recently, I think from like Dylan Bates, the Final Cut Bro on YouTube, where he, or maybe it was somebody else on Twitter, but they asked, of all of these like 5 things, what do you wish Apple would improve on in Final Cut? And keyframing was the #1 choice. In motion, it's amazing. Anyone else have any questions? Yes. Yeah. This is a great question. Yes. So if you wanted to export this with a transparent background, you want a specific setting. You'd want to go up to Share, Export Movie, Settings. So this should look super familiar to you if you use Final Cut. Video and audio, and video codec. You want to use Apple ProRes 4444. That is going to give you the transparent background. But I will show you the file size on a 4444 animation is ginormous. So only export that way if you have to, by necessity. Yes. Yeah. It sort of just depends on the original resolution of the file you're working with. And there is a setting, and you're really setting me here. There is a setting where you can, I'm going to give you my email. I'm going to put my email at the end because I can't think of it right now, but there is, if you do have a problem like that where things are pixelating, there is a way to optimize it a little bit, and it might help you out. Would you zoom with if you were zooming, would you zoom with the position and scale values, or would you zoom with the camera? I would try it both ways with the position, playing with the position and scale. I'll show you guys real quick what the camera does. The camera basically makes the project 3D, and you may like that because what you can do when the project is 3D is you can change. So just in case anyone is unclear on this, when you're changing the X position of something, you're moving it side to side. When you're changing the Y position, it's going up and down. When you're changing the Z position, it's going forward toward you and backward. So if we added a camera to this is a little more advanced, but I think you're ready for it. I'm going to go up to here to add object, camera, and it's going to say, do you want to make this project 3D? Yeah, let's make it 3D. So what I'm going to do now is find my camera. Here it is. I'm going to keyframe this. You could add behaviors to the camera, but I'm not going to. Let's say I wanted to start after my animation is finished, right here. I'm going to head on over to the inspector, and under properties, I'm going to make some changes with the camera. So I'm going to set a keyframe for scale on the camera and position. And then I'm going to head down in my timeline, I don't know, a few frames. And then I'm going to change the scale and position values to go through that shield. So I'm going to, it's the opposite of what you think. You reduce the scale with the camera in order to go in tight. And then, you would perfect this, let's say. And then what could happen is you could have move the Z position of all of your elements so that they come at the screen and come past you at different rates. So I always try to explain the Z position as, let's say you're driving down a highway, okay? And you see nothing but billboards. You're driving to Disney and it's nothing but billboards, Yeehaw Junction, everything in the way. And when you're in the car and you see a billboard in the distance, it looks like what? It looks low to the ground. It looks small. It looks like it's pointing right at you. But as you drive down the highway closer, you realize, no, that billboard's way up in the air. It's huge and is actually pointing past me. So your perspective changes. So once you start, when you want to dig into motion, have some fun, start playing with the Z position on your elements. And let me pick something to show you how to access that. Under the position, it shows you X and Y, but if you drop down, there's your Z. And so you could put all of these elements on different planes and it feels really dynamic, like you're flying through your animation. Sometimes it takes a lot of juice. You got to have a juicy computer to really get it to work and not to stutter or be unhappy. But the camera's like the coolest thing in motion, in my opinion. So I would try to answer your question in this very roundabout way. I would try playing with the position and the scale value, like to get the effect you're talking about. But I would also try using the camera. I think you might like it. How are we doing on time? 12:05. Got a few more minutes. Does anyone else have anything else you want to know about motion? All right, I'm going to put up some information for you guys. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys have been awesome. Thank you.